Reddington just introduced doubt about what happened with Lindsay's alleged suicide attempt. I mean, this is huge. Today, he yet again brought up inconsistencies in Patrick's story and even called out the fact that they did not do a proper investigation. Starting with the 911 call, Reddington asked Dr. S, "Did I hear you say that Patrick is the main source of Lindsay saying I tried to unalive myself?" And he said yes. Reddington then asked, "Did you listen to the 911 call when Patrick is speaking to Lindsay as she's laying on the ground with a broken neck?" And he said, "Yes, I did." Reddington asked, "Did you hear her response to Patrick's comment, 'What did you do?' And he said no." Reddington then asked, "Did you hear her respond to anything other than what will be described as guttural grunts?" And he said, "Not on that call." Reddington then said, "You know what the injuries were. You know the damage to her throat. Is it your understanding that someone with those injuries, with the drugs she consumed, with a broken neck, could have a conversation?" And he said, "Based on the witness testimony from her husband, yes." Reddington said, "Aside from Patrick's words, did you hear a conversation?" And he said, "Not on that 911 call," and he agreed that he could only hear grunts. He then goes to Lindsay's alleged suicide attempt, and this is where things get crazy. Reddington said, "Where did you hear the bedroom door was locked?" And he, of course, said, "Patrick." Reddington said, "Inside the room, you said you saw crushed pills in the cup on the nightstand. How do you know there were drugs in that cup?" And he said, "Patrick told me that." Reddington said, "Was there ever a report that said there was crushed up medication inside that cup? And did they ever even test the residue?" And he said, "No." Reddington said, "So how do we know it was even drugs?" And he said, "It was Patrick Clancy's observation." And Reddington said, "So basically, when you're reviewing all the evidence and facts and your entire opinion on this case, you're getting a lot of that from Patrick, right?" And he agreed. Reddington then brought up the fact that there was no pill crusher, no pill residue anywhere, and no police testing done. And then he pulled out this entire drawer with the empty medicine bottles. He then said, "Does it seem reasonable that someone who just did what she did to her wrists and neck in a psychotic state would neatly put the bottles back into the nightstand, or would they just scatter them across the floor?" And his only response that he could come up with was that, "I don't know her sequence of events that night." Reddington said, "Okay, so how did they get in the drawer?" And he said, "I don't know." He then said they could have fingerprinted them and said, "Do you know, did anyone do any testing at all in this investigation?" And he basically said, "I don't know." And later on, he pointed out the fact that Patrick said when he left the house that day, he saw Dawson sitting on the couch eating chicken nuggets, but Lindsay said at this point she was still getting dinner ready. And he said in the crime scene photos, you can see in Dawson's bowl there is carrot residue, and that Lindsay said she never served chicken nuggets to them in a bowl. She would always serve it on a plate. So Lindsay was telling the truth.